Hello, my name is Daniel Michael, and for those of you that don't know me, I'm the founder and co-creator of the Main Street Universe Radio Network, as well as the founder of the Warrior Seed Project. Warrior Seed Meditation is a Weapon, which right now has a YouTube channel. Same thing with Main Street Universe. We'll be bringing it back soon, meaning Main Street Universe as a fully functioning podcast. Right now, it has a YouTube channel. I'm also a luthier, a guitar maker, and restore guitars. That is part of my love, my hobby, my passion, as well as a musician, singer, guitar player for the band Dragon's Head, which will be recording an album sometime here in the very near future. First one in at least 5 years. So very excited about a lot of things in development. Today, I'm going to be discussing a therapeutic term, quote, imposter syndrome, unquote, as I'm also studying to be a therapist, and how it applies collectively to the broader pagan community. And I am curious, I'm interested in your insight. Insight as to why the practitioners of the fastest growing spiritual movement in the United States of America seem to have an issue with effectively organizing and capitalizing on this growth, and even struggling to refer to this movement, so many do, even as a faith. And of course, many, even though devout for decades or more, absolutely refuse to refer to this path as a religion. That's right, the R word, folks. Part of the etymological history of the word religion stems from the Latin religio, then to religare, meaning to bind fast or to bond. Or, a little later on, respect for what is sacred. Religare, specifically, is in reference during pre-Christian or pagan Rome to define reverence for the gods. Yes, brothers and sisters, you see what I'm saying? The very word religion can be traced back to pagan origins. So then, why the insistence by so many within our community to not refer to this practice as a religion, or even by some a faith? Now, I do understand and am fully aware of the fact that magic and witchcraft themselves are a practice and not necessarily a faith or religion. It's a completely understandable argument. But I'm talking about this thing as a whole. Anyway, we'll get to it. Let me start by saying this, that my view on faith is that faith is active and not passive. So see, what we are experiencing here by folks that, or at least by some that do not want to refer to it as a faith, is, in my humble opinion, a collective form of, quote, imposter syndrome, unquote. Imposter syndrome is defined as persistent inability to believe that one's success is deserved or has been legitimately, very important, achieved. Achieved as a result of our efforts or skills. This leads to a collective sleepy anxiety. Now, I say sleepy because many individuals, and so many do, myself included in the past, suffer anxiety and often retreat within. Good example could be escape sleeping versus legitimate strategic rest. So there could be this ignoring reality, this going back to sleep, and of course it can get much worse than that. Purposeful, self-destructive patterns in an attempt to control outcomes. You see, This is where I'm getting to the complaining and the criticizing that so often happens publicly in the pagan community. Because even a negative outcome, a negative one that can come about from all this bickering, is a familiar one. It's like saying, okay, it's a bad neighborhood, but it's a neighborhood that I know. And here's the point. With this perpetuated bad behavior comes the assumption, whether they know it consciously or not, that there is no legitimate integrity to defend in the first place. I'll say that again. The criticizing, the complaining, the demonizing that the pagans do to each other, especially publicly, is their way of announcing, whether they know it or not, that there's no legitimate integrity to defend anyway. It gets even deeper. The otherwise well-intended will sometimes not even engage in a diplomatic discussion or properly address a disagreement. Again, stemming from a subconscious lack of confidence in our legitimacy as a movement. If you feel like it's not integral or legitimate enough to make those subtle moves, even for someone who's not as critical, but just won't go and try to make bridges and have conversations, it's deep within you that part of the reason why is you don't think it's legitimate to begin with. This community is very quick to dismiss others, even those with a long history of effective community building projects, and again, without even attempting to understand or generate a conversation or diplomatic solution. If someone in the pagan community is seen as having just said one little thing that meets disapproval, then this community is quick not only to abandon them, but to make it a public spectacle. No attempt to reconcile, no attempt to build bridges, no concern. Here's where it becomes more important. No concern for the community as a whole becomes the trend. And why? Why? Because those involved are still deep within them, whether they consciously know it or not, don't feel that the path they are a part of, the path they were drawn to, called to, is the real thing or a real faith or a real religion in the first place. So why not? Think about it. It's easy to criticize and demonize a link in the chain if you never saw the chain as a whole to be strong enough or even necessary. It's easy to harm part of a communal ecosystem if you don't see or feel or value the synergistic effects that your actions and your criticisms publicly have, because you planted a seed, meaning you engaged in this faith, you engaged in this path, but you really don't deeply on a primal level believe that this seed will grow into a legitimate, great living tree. So what happens is these segmented groups claim their own corner of the universe, multiverse, dig in a moat, find a few allies, and continue with the dopamine fixed massage of bashing or denouncing others. I will say this. It's good to have all these little segmented groups, covens, whatever you want to call them. That's a good thing. It's good to have a foundation built from these many little pods. My old co-host, Kevin Baird, used to refer to, he would say pagan unity is often based in small pods. He used the word pods. But the lesson that is lost here, the lesson that's lost, is we are lacking a unified field flowing through and binding all of these fragmented independent groups together. The cohesive resin component is missing. And it's not subtle, folks, and you all know what I'm talking about. It's venomous. Now, some of you may be asking, so Daniel, are you hopeful? Are you hopeful for the future of the pagan, Wiccan, druid, whatever you want to call it, ceremonial magician community? The answer is yes. In fact, yes. I actually am very hopeful. Why, might you ask? Because I, my friends, believe that we can complement rather than compete. Evolution, not revolution. I work with the forces of nature, not against them. And the last time I checked, scientifically, venom that I mentioned before can be transformed into the antidote. And scientifically, humans have a basic primal survival-based mechanism within them, a commonality within them, a universality within all of us to connect, to bond. And it's this that I am counting on. This is why even the most negative complainers are still in some ways linked to this community. There is still a primal urge to connect. Early humans, even before language, communicated in subtle ways: body posture, expression, even intuitive sensing, eye gestures. The greatest and most feared punishment or consequence was to be banished or to be separate from the group. It could mean certain death, taking on the wild all by yourself, without the protection and wisdom and intuition and connection of the group. My approach is to be less detail-oriented and more focused on the legitimate values that a unified sense can bring: connection, networking, unity for legal issues affecting us, the ability to generate funds or even employment, a pool of all sorts of resources, in fact, for projects, whether personal or perhaps nature-based, for example, showing a legitimacy that, yes, does matter in the eyes of the outside world, even though so many pagans believe that that is not important. Well, I'm of the opinion that we happen to share the world with everybody else so that it is important. What about getting into things such as ideas on elderly housing, Pagan-themed schools? Again, some people do not find us to be like, we're not real enough for that kind of thing. They might not even know that's why they're saying it, but why would we do that? I'm just interested in practicing magic. It's, again, imposter syndrome. To me, that's exactly what it is. Moving on. Involvements in charity, philanthropic endeavors in general. And I say it's about being a good citizen first and being a good pagan, Wiccan, etc. second. Throughout human history, pagans were the norm of all cultures, Irish, African, whatever. Vast, great empires, as well as indigenous variations. Through time, and for many various reasons, that began to change. The face, the big three, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, grew. They grew and grew and they took over. And let's face it, folks, they won. I am not in competition with any of the big three book religions. But let's be honest, folks, they won. And the victory was broad and almost complete. And it's entrenched and has become absolutely culturally foundational. Witchcraft itself was illegal up to the 1950s in the UK, in the USA, in the United States of America. Still, we have, quote, gypsy laws on the books, and occasionally they're still referenced to and enforced. in very, very real world ways. I know a few personal cases of this. As a result, again, so many modern pagans who grew up most likely in either the big three or in a non-faith, perhaps science or atheistic family, they have this sense that what they've been called to, what they've been drawn to, and maybe even what they dedicate a lot to, kind of still isn't real. Deeply, this is embedded into our physical, biological DNA, but then so is our quest to find this path. But we still feel the loss when we engage. And again, might not be aware of it consciously, but this imposter syndrome shows up. These shadows come to pay a visit when these demonizers and critics and complainers act and speak and make these public spectacles out of their other pagan brothers and sisters. Now, don't get me wrong. If someone's really behaving bad, they deserve to be called out. But you all know what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about the unnecessary and excessive criticism that goes on and the bickering that goes on in this community. So now, as we are all here at this gathering, whether in person or at a distance, I will say this. People, they are searching. The populace, they are searching. Right now, our movement is growing. And right now, our movement offers so much value to what these folks are searching for. Introspection, psychological awareness, the belief in engaging in spiritual technologies, even magic, yes. Even scientists, they're studying magic and its potential effectiveness to whatever degree they believe in it, but understanding why people do it and the effects it has on the autonomic nervous system. Moving on. The bonding with nature, the bonding with the gods, the goddesses, the energies of old, the energies that moved our ancestors, that moved our DNA and theirs before we were told what the rules are. Science is beginning to back us up, folks. We are what they are interested in, meaning practices similar or exactly what pagans are doing. A recent study, for example, showed that outdoor bonding with nature is more effective for calming depression or ADHD in children than any of the prescription drugs. Of course, it also helps with focus and clarity. Yes, inner peace leading to effective action. Science isn't studying little rules from the book face about whether, whether it's okay to be friends with a divorced couple or whatever the case is. They're studying the effectiveness of us. Science is rediscovering our value. There's no need for this imposter syndrome. And I haven't even gone into the incredible effects, the incredible psychological effects of the transformation journey that paganism offers. We were legitimate. We are legitimate. And we always will be, because we don't fight nature. We complement it. We bond with it. We are it. And through this knowledge and practice, we're not only legitimate, we are inevitable. My name is Daniel Michael, here at the Washington County Library. Thank you all, and have a beautiful day or evening.